Well, welcome to our next session on Grace Changes Everything, and I've titled this Monte Carlo or Bust. You might not understand that right at this moment, but hopefully you'll see the point pretty soon. Just for the sake of today, I'm taking a slight detour away from Romans to throw some new light on what we've been talking about. So I want you to go to Galatians chapter 1, verse 6 and 7. I marvel that you are turning away so soon from him who called you into the grace of Christ, to a different gospel, which is not a gospel at all. It's not another gospel. But there are some who trouble you and who pervert the gospel of Christ. Now, Monte Carlo or bust. The phrase Monte Carlo or bust, you might have heard it. You might, people that you know might have used that phrase. But it came from a very popular film. It was kind of a wacky race style film. And it had sort of lots of famous actors and actresses in it. And stories about a race where the one who gets to Monte Carlo first takes the whole prize. And the prize is actually a car factory or a car manufacturing firm owned by a particular family that's got itself into debt. The film tells the story of the race with lots of crazy events, but the main point of it is there is only one destination and that matters, and it's the one who finds it that gets everything. The gospel is like that. It's grace or nothing. Now, I live in Cambridge, and today we're filming again in Church of Edward, King and Martyr. And this is in an area of Cambridge that goes by the name called Little Germany. And in this place, the Reformation in the UK began. The group who were here included Barnes, Bilney, Coverdale, Frith, Latimer, Parker, Ridley, Tyndall, and later on Cranmer became associated with this place and preached many sermons here. The first Reformation sermon was actually preached from the pulpit in St Edward's Church. Most of these men gave their lives for the gospel, knowing that it was precious and must not be silenced. That gospel that they preached was one of grace alone, by faith alone. It is the only gospel. It's the gospel of grace received by faith, or it's not the gospel at all. Now, it's still necessary to defend this gospel today, because there are still people who will distort it, who will pervert it, who will mix it in with bits of law, bits of religious observance, bits of condemnation, bits of religion, bits of judgment, and they'll tell you that God's always mad at you, that you're always failing, and they'll judge you. And they'll judge you from their place of superior righteousness. Now, these people, they often don't know they're doing it, but they use all the right words. Words like grace, faith, but in practice, their approach is one of adding on other requirements to the simple gospel of grace received through faith. The simple gospel of our access to the blessings of God based on what Christ has done purely because of our belief in him and our trust in him. Their focus is on performance, of trying harder to please God. And they spread despair, they dampen excitement, they dampen zeal, they burn out good Christians. They make strong believers feel like failures. And they dampen down the fire of love of God in people's hearts. Because they produce generations after generations of believers who are constantly focusing on their shortcomings, their failure, their lack, their guilt, and they feel condemned and they feel tired. Because they imply that God will only respond to us on the basis of us earning it, on the basis of what we have done, on the basis of how holy we walk. They think that the only good meeting is one where everybody at the end is weeping and wailing and crying and feeling sorry for themselves and just totally aware of how they've let God down. They are very sincere, and yet they are sincerely wrong when you compare that to the gospel and the freedom that Christ died to give us. The effect of mixed gospel, that mixed gospel of your performance mixed with grace, is to disable believers like you and me from living in the fullness of all that Christ died to give us, preventing us attaining the fullness of Christ in us, the fullness that Christ paid for. Because the fruit produced from that mixed gospel is guilt, shame, condemnation, a continual feeling of never being good enough. And it might be that today and through much of your life you have felt like that. And today I want to give you the good news of the gospel. You see, when people preach this mixed gospel of performance and earning things from God and trying harder to get things from God, we end up just focused on our own sinfulness and believing that to please God, we must focus on our faults, we've got to focus on our shortcomings, and the more we do that, the harder we find it is to fix ourselves. And that is just draining. But the gospel of grace received by faith, is the only gospel. If we preach anything other than grace received by faith, it is not the gospel at all. It is not the gospel that those reformers died for. There can't be any mixing, any distorting, any half relying on our own goodness or half relying on our own performance or half relying or totally relying on trying to earn things, doing things better to get things from God, trying harder and just burning ourselves out. That is not the gospel. The gospel is good news. It's grace from beginning to end. It's grace at the start, it's grace along the way, and it's grace that will see you through. And eventually, it is grace that will open the arms of God to receive you in heaven. It's Monte Carlo or bust. Grace through faith or nothing at all. Let me pray for you. Father, I thank you that the gospel is all about Christ and not about me. I pray, Lord, that you will open the eyes of our understanding and open our hearts to receive by faith the simple truth that is based solely on the merits of your Son, and that we receive that and respond by faith into the arms of a loving God. Amen.